Howdy kiddos, welcome back to the RimWorld Restart on Death series, where we are currently living up our voluptuous lives as steampunk samurai. Today we start out by mining some resources under the mountain here in our strip mining operation, not only because we need these resources for an upcoming project, but also because we're trying to excavate the ancient danger that is hidden under this mountain. Now, we're no fools, so we know exactly what could be hiding behind those walls, or at least we have a good idea of such, so we ended up building some proper defenses to try and protect ourselves. Now, for cracking open the ancient danger walls, we have chosen Omar, as he is one of our few samurai with both of his normal natural-born legs, which is becoming a scarcity nowadays. After he opened up the wall, we realized that the entire place was crawling with mechanoids and megascarabs. It would appear that we are indeed in for a fight. They had snipers, they had shotgun mechs, they even worst of all had a flamethrowing mech, which our clockwork turrets were none too happy with. But thankfully, with our combined efforts, it wouldn't take much at all for us to easily defeat them. Now with the mechs defeated though, we could focus on more important things like putting out the fires and trying to salvage any technology that we could, as well as people that may have been of use to us. After investigating a bit further, of course we had plenty of new items that we could take back home, but we also ended up having some marine armor that we would provide to Throb. Not to worry though, I ended up dyeing it purple. Can't even tell the difference. Since we've been having such a large surge in the amount of items that we have and that we're bringing in, I thought it might be best if we went ahead and built a much larger storage room that's about twice or 3 times the size of our previous one, and then of course we began hauling all of our goodies in there. The question remains though, now that we've emptied out the old storage room, what do we do with it? Well, I've decided to use it as something of a makeshift recreation hall with a nice poker table and a billiards table. I know it's not exactly the most accurate culturally, but you know, it makes them happy. If you guys are cool with it, and only if you're cool with it, I might find some mods that add some recreational items that fit the culture a bit better. Let me know what you think about that. Now that everyone has a proper place to enjoy themselves though, I think we're going to dabble in a bit more research. This time around, we're going to be researching steamwork turrets, which will allow us to create a steam cannon. Now, whether or not this cannon fires an actual cannonball or a gigantic spewing steam geyser is yet to be seen. Now, while we're working on the research, I want to go ahead and show off some of the wonderful names that you guys have provided and that I have chosen for our samurai. First up, we have Throb, who is going to be renamed Zaltoichi, which was suggested by our good friend EE45122, and the name is actually from the main character of a movie about a blind samurai and/or swordsman, which is very fitting for Throb. Next up, we have Ori, who is going to be renamed to Origami, which is a name suggestion from our compadre Luca Belestra 3550, who said that he should be renamed to Origami due to his crafting and artistic skills, and I completely agree. Last but not least, we have Harry, who is now going to be renamed to Aoshiro, a great name suggestion from our friend Neil Jan99, because of course Harry has blue skin and white hair, so it makes sense. Now, I will say though that Google Translate actually says blue-white should actually be Aijiro, I think. I'm not very good at pronouncing the words, and I also don't speak Japanese, and I'm relying on Google Translate. But either way, you know, I love the name. I'm here for it, so yeah. Now that we've got the naming out of the way though, we're going back to the ancient danger to strip up any steel out of the floor, the columns, anywhere we can find it on the map essentially, and we're also going to be deconstructing mechanoids for the same purpose. The reason being, we're going to be utilizing these resources to build ourselves a brand new type of steam tank, although this will take quite a while, as you well know, so we'll come back to it in a moment. Besides, we have plenty to do now that we finally finished up our research into steamwork turrets, and we can build our very first steam cannon. Now, interestingly, but shocking to no one, I'm sure, this steamwork cannon actually has to be hooked up to the steam pipeline. So that makes sense, I guess. It does not, however, require any type of traditional power source like electricity though, which is completely fine by me. I really like that we're using kind of a fraction of modern technology and electricity and things like that, and also some steam tech, and it's all wrapped up into this nice little bundle of a fraction of Japanese, ancient Japanese culture. It's interesting. But I'm done yapping, baby, because we have yet another steam tank to build. This one is not your average average steam tank. No, this one, my friends, is called an Alter Comrade steam tank. Now, there are some slight differences between it and the original model, mainly the fact that the cannons on the front of this one are much smaller, but they have a much wider radius and fire much faster. This did remind me, though, that we still need a name for our previous tank. I would end up naming our original tank a Matsumara. This splendid name suggestion was suggested by our friend the guy who goes meh, who was saying that the name is after the god of blacksmiths in Shinto. So of course it seems like the perfect name for an ironclad on wheels. Before I forget as well, I just saw a wonderful name for our mega terrarium that is going to be Acupella, or Acupia. Once again, I'm not very good at pronouncing the names, unfortunately, but it is going to be named after the turtle that holds up the world. A great suggestion from our friend Till Dao from Hindu mythology, so thank you very much for that. Now, before we move on, I feel it's important that I tell you that I am currently using the storyteller by the name of Mifune Misfortune. I didn't mention this earlier on because sometimes I change storytellers depending on the type of story I want to tell, but so far I've stuck with him. Now, I do notice that we're able to build a lot without really having any incidents happening. There's not really that many raids, pretty few and far between, and the reason I bring all this up is because I just feel like I've built so much without really having too much of an issue. So I wanted your opinion if I should change the storyteller back to the vanilla ones, or if you like the way that the story and the colony is progressing. Either way though, I do plan on bringing the fight to our enemies since they're not coming to us. But before that, I should also mention that we had finally recruited Tha into our ranks. She of course was the impid farmer that was at the logging site from last episode, and we were happy to have her aboard. We would immediately send her into our warehouse to go ahead and equip some proper attire and weaponry. She's looking much better, and I'm hoping that she can make good work out of that matchlock rifle she's obtained. Now, before we end up going out and attacking our enemies, I thought it might be best for everyone to get a little bit of protein into their bodies because all we've been eating are vegetables like rice and potatoes. The opportunity would present itself in the form of some two-headed cows in the area. This planet never ceases to amaze me. Well, we decided to send Omar out and he would begin hunting them with his battle rifle. I suppose that they're safe enough to eat. Perhaps a taste test is in order. Well, now that everyone's muscles are feeling big and strong, they'll be strong enough to lift these cannons up off the ground, and that way they can hold them onto our ox cart and prepare for an invasion. For you see, my friends, we are going to be attacking the space mercenaries for a change. I grow tired of sitting around waiting in fear on them to attack us. It is time that we bring the fight to their front door. As the majority of the group were traveling, we ended up having a mech cluster drop back home, and I found it quite interesting as there was indeed a clockwork beetle among the mechanoids, meaning simply that even clockwork and steamwork automatons can be taken over by the hive, something we should keep in mind in the future when we build our own. Regardless though, the group had finally arrived at the mercenary base. It was quite well defended by automated turret, but even more so, it was absolutely crawling with the mercs. Once again, as you can tell, I am playing a bit fast and loose here, and this is going to be our most dangerous endeavor yet. I do have Laz enclosed in our most durable steam tank though, so he should be safe and sound. Hopefully. After arriving at our designated location, we began prepping our cannons to be fired on the enemies. These cannons are simply Phase 2 though. Phase 1 is using the cannons on our tanks to begin attacking the enemies in the city itself. Doing so, of course, would get their attention so that we could try to run away and draw them away from their turrets, as well as any cover they would be able to take inside the city. These mercenaries may have the advantage of technology and muscle on their side, but we have intelligence and ingenuity. We would still need to try to end this as swiftly as possible though, because even though our steam tanks have very durable stainless steel plating, these plasma weapons can burn through it easily, given that they have enough time to do so, which it doesn't seem that they will, as they are now fleeing the area after we've curb-stomped them. I suppose the cowards couldn't stand the sight of seeing their allies stuck in the treads of our steamy wheels. Unfortunately, many of them would still end up getting away as our tanks were very damaged and I had feared trying to chase them any further. I am also afraid to say, but we did end up suffering one casualty during the battle. Omar has died. He had succumbed to a shot straight through his heart and we had no opportunity to try and save save him or tend to him, unfortunately. Not to mitigate our loss here today, as it is devastating, but given the circumstances of the weapons and armor that these mercenaries have at their advantage, it's a damn miracle we didn't lose many more. Our success would not have been possible without our tanks, though. Though we weren't interested in most of these mercenaries because the majority of them didn't have that great of skill sets, or they had some type of drug addiction that we wouldn't be able to fuel, and thus they would end up going insane, we did have one here who had a pretty decent skill set, no drug addictions, and thus we would tend to her wounds and take her prisoner. We would also need to have a few of our people begin repairing these tanks if we ever hope to get them back home, as they were almost completely decimated from the plasma weapons. As some of our samurai were repairing the tanks though, Laz and a few others would go into the town itself and begin trying to engage with the turrets there so that they may not kill us in the future. Or, right now either. I had hoped to take many of them back home with us, but it doesn't seem like that's going to be much of an option. With all of the turrets destroyed or dismantled though, we would be free to go throughout the town and begin looking for riches. We ended up finding quite a few sapphire, as well as quite a few piles of silver. There were a few other things we would be sure to claim as much as we could before beginning to make our way back home. Once we had left the road though, going through the mountains, the journey would be quite long, so in the meantime we had a bulk goods trader arrive at the colony here at Flowing Hills, and we decided to do a little bit of trading with them. As you can see, we ended up purchasing 2 cows. I think these will be perfect for giving us some good calcium in our diet from their milk, and possibly some protein when we eventually slaughter them. Our war party would finally end up arriving back home a little bit later into the evening, at which point we would throw the Cruel into a prison cell and begin recruitment attempts. As you can see, she's pretty good at crafting, but really good at melee and shooting, and that's really all we want her for. She's also a quick sleeper. Using our steam tanks, we would easily dismantle this mech cluster, and then, unfortunately, poor Laz would have to bear the burden of burying our friend Omar. His tomb would be engraved with some very simple artwork. The depiction of a district with a careful arrangement of a dozen lentils around it. Though his passing was very sad and our mourning of him will continue, we must also continue pushing forward with our colony, so we're going to be hauling in all the cargo that we got from our raid. And of course, I would allow all of our fine folks to have at it with any armor and weapons that they choose. By the end of it, they were looking pretty darn good, though unfortunately it doesn't seem that I can dye the ninja armor here, so it does have to stay black. I suppose black, red, and purple are now going to be our main colors, which I'm kind of fine with, to be honest, because the straight purple was a little bit bland. I also wanted to build a very small battery room, that way we can at least store a little bit of power. We normally only use electricity for some lights, so I think that's fine. However, I will say that we had also taken a brass turret from the raid when it happened, and we will be using it as well. I realize it's more modern tech, but my kind of unspoken rule here is that that's fine as long as it's stolen and or earned through combat. We then began to tackle something of a mega project. I was going to build a very large garage for our steam tanks. Now, I previously had a clip where I actually dug out this very large square and started putting in the garage doors, or at least I thought I did. Maybe I wasn't recording or wasn't paying attention, but that's what we're building. Not only will this be a safe place to keep our tanks, they'll also be out of the way in here. Up until this point, we've had our garage gates built into our walls, and this has caused some issues as we continue expanding out the village inside the walls. We decided that we would begin to work on a clockwork leg finally. As mentioned previously, we needed a crafting of tin, which Origami now has after plenty of practice making weapons and other sorts of items. Now, this leg is still a bit of a prototype, so just bear with me here as we try to shove it into Laz's stump. I joke, I kid, I play. Of course, this was a proper surgery and it went off without a hitch, even though we had a very low medical skill. I think she had a medical skill of 5, and there was a very high chance of that killing him and or injuring him. Which brings me to my next point. I know a lot of you guys have been bringing up how we're basically not going to die at some point after we get some heavy defenses and stuff like that, and I just want to assure you that I will be taking chances like this along the way, so there's a pretty high chance that we end up dying regardless, because, I mean, technically that is the point of the series, no? Of course, though, I'm not trying to kill him. Either way, once the anesthesia had wore off, his moving was up to 85%, which was much better than it was previously with his peg leg. Still not 100%, but we'll take what we can get. Later on into the rainy evening, we had finally recruited the Cruel, who it didn't seem to take very long to break her resistance and have her join us here, thankfully. After seeing a bunch of samurai wipe out your entire colony with some tanks that run off steam power, I suppose I can't blame her. We're the coolest damn cats on the planet. Who wouldn't want to join us? We would even trust her to dual wield some ancient charge SMGs. Oh wow. Welcome aboard, little buddy. Now I have some good news and bad news. The good news, our cow is pregnant, so that's good. The bad news, we're under attack again. I suppose this was to be expected though. We haven't had a raid in quite a while, like I mentioned earlier, and the entire time we've been playing in this save and on this planet, we haven't had a raid from this Impid tribe, so it's well overdue. I have positioned Laz and a couple others in the main tower closest to where the raid was coming from, which was a massive mistake because they immediately lit us on fire and we almost blew them up with a cannon. No, really, I swear I'm not trying to kill him. We would pull out from the tower and try to take cover behind our clockwork turrets and the embrasures. This was going pretty great, at least for a little bit of time, until the enemies continued to spew further and further through the gates. It was time for us to get a little bit hands-on here because our turrets and traps could only take us so far. We had managed to kill many of them, and by doing so they would begin to try to run away. We weren't too keen on letting cowards get away from us, so we would kill as many as possible, but unfortunately, as you well know, some of them did manage to escape our vicinity. There's always next time. As you can imagine, that fire breath from them was a little bit of a hairy situation, so we had plenty of fires to put out, but luckily the rain helped out with that quite a bit, and then we would actually end up taking one of them as a prisoner. We would of course begin the recruitment process. Now, I'd be lying to you if I said that she had any decent skills at all other than shooting in melee, but she can be a good fighter for us, I'm sure. Now, our metallic resources were becoming quite low once more. Looks like we'll have to go out and collect some from a different area, as I believe we began depleting all the ones in our vicinity here. However, they are low because I've been saving up for a little project. As a matter of fact, I've been using these resources to build more plate armor, pistons, and yada 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 to build yet another steam tank. I know, you love it, I love it, we all love it. The problem with this one though, it has a flame turret instead of a steam turret, so that means we need chem fuel, and I haven't noticed any boomalope in our area. So I decided to actually load up our hot air balloon with some silver, and I was going to go out and buy some. Now, I'm sure all of you remember, but our allies around here are few and far between, so the only person we could really go out and try to do any trading with to purchase chem fuel was the Black Clan, but upon our arrival I noticed that they didn't have any chem fuel to be spoke for. They did, however, end up having a calligraphy table, which we could have researched and built ourselves, but we haven't done that research yet, and I thought it'd be easy to spend about 100 silver on it, so we bought it. I'm not sure how peaceful and tranquil it'll be to try and paint on this next to a poker table, but it's better than nothing, I guess. Oh well, we'll eventually get around to finding some chem fuel or taming some boomalopes somewhere perhaps. Maybe we'll form a camp a few miles away from the village. But as you could probably tell, I'm trying to up my repertoire of these steam tanks as there are many different kinds. I think I'd like to have something of a little army of them so that we can go and invade other bases. However, something for the moment that I feel is long overdue is our research that we need to complete about our utilization of the mega terrariums. Because currently we haven't even the slightest clue what we can use Occupara's gigantic globe on his back for. After completing the required research though, I could see that he is literally just for growing crops. However, there were still a few areas that were marked out that we couldn't use. I noticed a bit further down the research tree there was one called Unlock Chemical Divisions. I thought maybe there was a chance we could grow some chem fuel, so we went ahead and finished up both of those researches, but unfortunately it doesn't appear that we can actually do that. The new research does, however, allow us to grow ambrosia as well as herbal meds, so not really useful, but whatever. Perhaps if we have a gigantic volcanic explosion and we don't have any other way to grow plants. I did, however, notice that I actually have the technology unlocked for biofuel refining, which I forgot about, so I ended up just building one of those so we could make chem fuel. I would have preferred a steampunk variant, but I guess it has tanks and pipes and a boiler, so, you know, close enough, I suppose. With this chem fuel, though, we were finally able to fuel up the turret of our brand new tank, and we were going to take it out for a spin. We would test it it out on a pile of corpses, that way we can have a two birds in one stone situation. I think this very well may be my preferred tank, especially since enemy villages and bases are normally made out of wood. We could just essentially burn them to the ground easily. Slowly but surely though, our little collection of these behemoths is growing. I think next episode we may build a few more and maybe take them out for a spin, though we'll have to try to get our population up so we have enough people to actually man the guns inside of them. This planet is absolutely chock full of enemies just waiting to be conquered by us. Before the episode ends though, I want to mention that I moved our calligraphy table out by the hospital, out in the little kind of backyard shrine that we built last episode. Seems like a peaceful and more tranquil place for everyone to enjoy. But my friends, I want to thank you all ever so much for watching today's episode, and I would like to remind you that we need some names for our other tanks, as well as some of our new colonists and our cows, of course, as well, if anyone has any names they'd like to provide. But I want to thank you guys ever so much once again for watching. I love you, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.